Yes, Cohen Hatfield.
Yeah, Robert. Yes. And Drew is TRO.
All right, we're all getting back into our seats. We're about to begin.
Thank you.
Okay, we are resuming the meeting. At this point in time, we have already, for those of you who are following up at home, we have concluded the statements from staff in this public hearing process, and now we are about to listen to the arguments and statements that the union is going to make. So with that, I don't know if Mr. Volbach or if our attorney is going to start talking.
Madam Mayor, do we want to wait for Councilman Padilla?
Oh, he's not here? Yes, we do. We do, I thought he was here. All right, we have Councilmember Padilla here, so we may begin.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Matthew Bergman. I'm a partner and attorney at the firm of Friedman Forbes in Topeka. I appear before you tonight on behalf of the AFSCME Local 1294 with regard to the labor agreement impasse which exists between the city and the union. Standing to my right is Mr. Pete Volbach, who's a long-standing president of the Local 1294. The union represents approximately 75 employees of the water department, including operations, plant maintenance, operations, meter services, and distribution. These are the folks that make sure that your water is clean and safe when you turn your tap on at night, and they are the people that when something breaks, they fix it. My purpose tonight is to provide the City Council with a concise presentation of the objective facts, relevant information on the issues that are presented. Now, at the outset, on behalf of myself and the union, I want to make clear that we are not your enemy. My client is and has been committed through this entire process to good faith bargaining and reasonable compromise. The members of the Local 1294 believe the union and city should work together to ensure the best water service is provided to Topeka and its citizens. However, I would note that tonight is the very first opportunity that both myself and my client have had the opportunity to speak with you on these issues and the existing labor impasse. Because of that, I don't know what information you've been provided throughout the bargaining process. I'm not aware of how the union's position has been presented to you by the city management. Because of this, I would respectfully request that you listen carefully, read the conclusions and recommendations of the fact finder, and lastly, understand the issues presented before any determination is made. Now, tonight, I think we find ourselves in a bit of a unique setting. The city provided us some information that only identified one prior fact-finding report on behalf of the water union going before the city council. That was in 2005. And at that juncture, there was a unanimous decision to accept the fact finder's recommendation. It was viewed as objective and reliable evidence. The union's request to you this evening is simple and straightforward. We ask that you adopt the recommendations of the fact finder and mandate implementation of those findings on the issues presented. Such action will provide a reasonable wage increase to union employees, allow the city to implement a desired second shift, and modify contractual language which unfairly penalizes bargaining unit members. Moreover, the fact finder's report serves as the most objective evidence identifying fair and reasonable answers to the issues presented. Now, by way of history, we started this negotiation back in September of 2017. More than 22 months have passed. The parties have attended over 20 meet and confer sessions, 2 mediations, and under the statute, we ended up going to a fact finder. The prior labor agreement expired on December 31, 2017, and we've been without a contract since that time. The fact-finding process was required under statute. And here, the Honorable Ronald Ho was selected and agreed to by the parties to serve as the neutral fact finder, as an impartial, unbiased, and quite frankly, uninformed individual coming into our city to hear both sides present their evidence. You need to understand that Mr. Ho has been selected in nearly 2,000 cases in the public, private, and federal sector since 1981. That fact-finding process allowed both sides to present all argument and evidence and information at a formal hearing held in November 2018, and after that, Mr. Ho produced his written report. The parties then reconvened to determine if the outstanding issues could be resolved. During those meetings, we were advised that you, the City Council, would not agree to the findings and recommendations of Mr. Ho, and as a result, we are here tonight. Now, on the first issue of wages and retroactivity, you as the City Council have an opportunity to help remediate a wage disparity that has been present for years. Simply cutting to the chase, after all the evidence was presented to the fact finder, he determined that the union members are currently underpaid by 30%. That level of wage disparity does not develop overnight and is an issue that the union has been attempting to address since the beginning of negotiations. Now, if you're hearing this for the first time, you may ask, how does Topeka have employees that are paid 30% under market value? What evidence did the fact finder have to reach such a conclusion? While the union has argued for a very long time that this disparity exists, the city, through the last labor agreement, agreed to commission a wage study specific to this union and its compensation. In doing so, they chose, and they being the city, to engage the Austin Peters Group to perform an independent wage market study. That study was published on August 21st, 2018 by Rebecca Crowder, who's the president of the Austin Peters Group. Now, since receipt of the Austin Peters report, the city management has taken the position that the wage study is inaccurate. In other words, it's not valid. And that remains their position today. That stance is not supported by the objective evidence or the conclusions of the fact finder. And I want to read to you the fact finder's specific conclusions on this issue so that you fully understand that both the Austin Peters study and the fact finder's conclusions are valid. If you turn to page 27 of the fact finder's report, in the middle of the page it says, third, contrary to certain of the city's arguments before the fact finder, the Austin Peters Group wage study is both valid and accurate. First, Deputy Utilities Director Braxton Copley, the city's chief negotiator, testified that it was valid. In addition, the city had several opportunities to request from Austin Peters clarifications of certain elements contained in the study, and even after receiving such clarifications and the undisputed findings of that study, thereafter largely chose to ignore those findings in these negotiations. Indeed, the city's proposal here is higher than that which it agreed to for the city's water pollution control unit, not in response to the wage study and the very clear poor departmental comparability data contained in it, but rather because the city's proposal here is tied to the establishment of a second shift. The city itself commissioned the wage study, chose the Austin Peters Group to conduct it, and then largely chose to ignore the results, thereby greatly exacerbating the continuing department difficulties in recruiting qualified employees and worsening its bargaining relationship with the union, which had a right to believe that the Austin Peters study would result in, at minimum, an attempt to the city to remedy the city's very poor wage position for this unit when compared to those nearby public employers. Moreover, the Austin Peters study, finding of a 28.5% city wage differential from the comparability group average, was issued in August 2017. At the time of the fact finder's decision, that was 19 months ago. and thus does not include comparable employers' wage increases since that time, and thereby likely renders the difference in the average wages in that group when compared to this bargaining unit at a level of at least 30%. Now, what's truly amazing about the fact finder's conclusion is that he doesn't recommend that you as the city council implement a wage increase of 30% to resolve this disparity. In fact, I actually believe his final determination is in your favor. He determines that a realistic wage increase is 17% spread over the years of 2018, 2019, and 2020. If you want to look at your report, that specific recommendation can be found on pages 30 and 31, and then again on 30 and 32. Tonight, my client is not here asking for the city council to approve a 30% wage increase. We are simply asking that the objective recommendations of the fact finder be implemented with a 17% wage increase over the years of 2018, 2019, and 2020. Yet, as we stand here, city management refuses to recommend the fact finder's decision on wages for your approval. They say the money is not available for this level of wage increase. The union does not agree with that position, and let me explain why. First, the fact finder clearly determines that the implementation of a second shift will serve as an immense cost savings to the city, and due to the bargaining unit members either topping out of the wage matrix or being ineligible for step raises, additional funds will be available for the city to use towards wage increases. Let me read you the conclusions of the fact finder as found on page 29 and on to page 30. At the bottom of the page, I'll start. In the view of the fact finder, that 17% wage increase by the beginning of the calendar year of 2020 will allow the department to make a legitimate move in the direction of overcoming the extensive wage comparability deficit undisputed in the evidence concerning wages of this bargaining unit when compared to those in the agreed upon comparability group, and thus would positively impact the apparent continuous department problem of recruiting qualified employees to address the substantial aging city infrastructure. Utilizing the city's language previously in its presentation here, this wage increase will allow the city to become more competitive in the marketplace. That area will also be greatly aided by the establishment of a second shift recommended here and its inherent significant limitations on the past dangerous and efficient overuse of employee overtime, as well as its lessened potential liability inherent to employees working vast amounts of overtime without sufficient rest. It will show that the city takes seriously the undisputed elements of the Austin Peters wage study which it commissioned, which chose the Austin Peters Company to conduct it, and then which it largely ignored its virtually undisputed results when faced with the relative wage realities inherent in that study. It will allow the city to pay for these wage increases out of existing department funds, including 16% total water rate increases over that 3-year period approved by the city council. Ongoing additional funding in the department, and without the necessity of use of any other funds. The existence of the wage study and its findings will also allow the city to explain to the public and other bargaining units why the wage increase for this unit is somewhat above that involved in contract agreements with those other city bargaining units. And finally, assuming that some bargaining unit members are either at or will reach the top of their wage matrix during the 3-year period of this contract, those employees will no longer be eligible for step increases, and the cost of this wage recommendation will therefore be likely less than the 17% maximum overall cost set forth above in the 3-year period. In short, it is very likely that the wage increase recommended by the fact finder will be less than 17% to the city spread over 3 years. Now, secondly, we believe the funds for the 17% wage increase can be found within the overall operating budget for the Water Division. Annually, that budget sits right around $34 million. Stated by the city, the difference between their 11.5% and the fact finder's 17.5% is $200,000 a year. When you do the math, the impact on the Water Division budget is 0.0058. In other words, 0.5% of the entire Water Division budget. Third, funds have been available since the publication of the Austin Peters wage study, where the city could have reserved excess monies to address this wage disparity. You turn to page 23 of the fact finder's report. Look at number 7. The fact finder stated that the union's testimony at the hearing was uncontroverted. That means unchallenged, undisputed. That the City Water Division in November of 2017 had over $300,000 in additional funds available and unspent. In December of 2017, there was over $543,000, and in November of 2018, $574,000. On top of that, the City Council in late 2017 passed a water rate increase for city residents of 6% in 2018, 5% in 2019, and 5% in 2020. The fact finder says, in view of these elements, the city has an unquestionable ability to pay for the union's wage proposal. Now, I did a little research and I thought it was very interesting. I don't know if you all remember when that wage increase was approved by the city council, but the document that was used to support it was a third-party independent wage study that indicated there's a rate study, was a third-party independent rate study that verified how those rates need to be increased. Lastly, the funding of the water operations are proprietary in nature. In other words, those who use the service pay a fee to get it. It's not an operation funded by taxpayer money, and when the need for additional revenue exists, you as the governing body have the ability to modify the rate structure to address whatever need exists. Currently, there are right at 55,000 registered water meter customers on the city's system. If the difference on wages between the 11.5% offered by the city and the 17% recommended by the fact finder is $2,000 a year, do you know how much that calculates down to? 1 penny per day per metered user. And if that is paid, 1 penny, it equates to that $200,000 difference annually. And these union members can have a fair and competitive wage to put food on the table and care for their families. 1 penny. These union members, and they are city employees as well, deserve a fair wage for a fair day's work. And that's why I asked you to approve the fact finder's recommendations and implement their wages back to the start of 2018. If you do not do that, if you cut them off, they get nothing for 2018. No increases, 0. That is not fair. I am arguing to you as a matter of fairness to the people that provided fundamental service to our city. Now, I'll step back for a second and talk about second shift. We agree with the second shift. We agree with the fact finder's recommendations. We are willing to accept that, conditioned upon the city council approving the wage structure and package and application of the fact finder. I give Mr. Vobach and Braxton credit. They have sat down and worked that out. The one issue that remains is the fact that we want that language in the contract, and I'll tell you why. If it's not in the contract and it's simply a policy, it can be changed from day to day. And that is not something that has been negotiated, and we want it in our contract. Really, I think that 98% of that issue has been resolved. The one hangup is language where we want the ability to sit down if an issue arises and try to work it out with the city. Fair?
Very fair.
But I want to make clear, we are willing to accept what the city wants. We are willing to give you the second shift, contingent upon the acceptance of what the fact finder has recommended. Now, with regard to the third issue I have listed, which is wage administration. Currently in the contract, if you are a bargaining unit member employee and you're disciplined through a write-up, regardless of what it is for, you lose a step. You never get that back until the very end. In other words, if I'm a second-year employee and there's 20 years on the wage matrix, I could have a write-up in year 2. Maybe I make a mistake. Maybe I'm a newbie. I never have a chance to get that step back, and I never have the chance to recover that wage loss. Now, that issue was brought up for the fact finder, and you can read it in your report. He hints that it's an unfair labor practice. He hints that it's double jeopardy. He says in his report that you're getting dinged twice because not only you're getting disciplined, you're losing that wage ability for that step for the remainder of your career. That is why the fact finder recommended that it be changed, because he believes if that matter was litigated, it would be overturned by an arbitrator or court of law. I would think the city would want to insulate themselves from potential liability and try to correct that language. So with regard to that issue, we are asking again that you simply adopt the fact finder's recommendations because it is fair, reasonable, and objective. Now, I feel the need to add a couple more comments because of the presentation that was made by city management. The wage study commission to Austin Peters, that was through a public bid. I believe there were 3 groups that bid for it. The only communication that I'm aware of with regard to clarification, and this was in the letter that I sent you last week, was sent after we started negotiations, and an issue arose as to whether there was some positions that were actually, I guess, comparable or not. That's a fair way to put it. I was not aware of any other issues that the city was raising regarding the validity of the report. There was no further discussion about going back to Austin Peters and asking them to clarify a list of issues. I agree, if that would have been proposed or brought up at that time, we would have done it. But it is extremely frustrating to us to be 22 months into a negotiation and suddenly these issues pop up that, well, you know, we paid $10,000 for the study and we asked for the study, but it's really not a study. We're just going to put it over here. That is not good faith negotiation in my book. If the issues would have been brought up and raised to us, we could have addressed that. But when we went to fact finding, when there was a formal hearing and everything was laid on the table, everybody had a chance to say their piece, and the fact finder made his recommendations. He said that it is valid and accurate. So any challenge to that study for these purposes is a tough thing for us to swallow. Now, I stated earlier that I'm appealing you tonight as the City Council as a matter of fairness. Your duty is to identify the objective facts and then apply those facts in the best interest of the public. The public includes these individuals out here that provide that service. The system breaks down. The system breaks down when the objective facts are disregarded and some preconceived notion is followed through on. I think it's a breach of the public trust to ignore objective facts on any public policy matter. The most important asset of any organization, whether public or private, is its people. That's what we're here on tonight. It's these folks. I want you to stand up. Come on. It's these guys and these women. These folks need to be treated fairly, and that's why I am making this presentation to you tonight. I want to ask for your approval of the fact finder's recommendations, because we could be here asking for a whole lot more, but we're not. We're asking for what's fair and reasonable as of today. Thank you, and I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
At this point in time, the body has the opportunity to ask any questions that they would like from Mr. Bergman and from Mr. Bobach. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, first, I really didn't like when you said you didn't understand what we have been told by the city. They're professionals, we are professionals. It wouldn't have mattered, they didn't say anything besides what is right here, but it made me sound like I would go behind your back, the union's back, the workers' back, and listen. I didn't appreciate that. Secondly, the fact finder, was he aware, did he have a copy of the city budget?
He had whatever information the city chose to provide him as part of the fact-finding process.
So you don't know?
That would be a question for your legal counsel.
Well, no, because you keep saying that the city can pay for this through the cost savings and topping out and the water rate increases. Did you have a copy of the budget? Can you give me some numbers? What's the numbers that we're going to save and the numbers that we'll be able to pay then?
Well, there's already been testimony that you're going to save over $80,000 through the second shift, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's 80. Pete, do you want to add into that?
Well, not only that, you're going to save, part of that is the standby and overtime.
Okay, but how much here?
Well, again, we'll rely on what the city has said, which is the $80,000.
But you said, how can you say you will be able to pay for this if you don't even have the numbers to give me that we're going to be able to pay for this? How do you know? How can you say that then?
I think I've explained the mechanisms by which the money can be found and paid for.
Okay, but how much is that? You said that it would be $200,000 a year, right?
The difference between the city's proposal 11.5% and the fact finder's recommendation at 17.5% is $200,000 per year. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Right.
Okay. We believe that through the implementation of the second shift and the cost savings, there are monies available there. Mm-hmm. We also believe that there can be additional monies taken from the water budget, or you could change the rate structure if you wanted to provide this.
So when you said we can use the topping out money, how much is that? How much is that going to be for guys that top out?
Well,
I just don't want a blanket statement that, oh, you guys can pay for this. I want to know, prove it.
Well, we'd be happy to break it down for you. It would be dependent on how many folks actually do top out.
Exactly. Okay. So you haven't convinced me of that because you just haven't proved that. And then you said, yep, there's a lot of money left in the budget. Where do you propose to cut? in the water budget to pay for the salaries.
Here's my issue, is that this study came out in August of 2017, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. That fall, and Pete, you can correct me here, there was an audit done within the water division, and there was $300,000 made available. That was in November.
Made available.
It was unspent funds that were available within the budget, okay? And
Did you ask them why it was unspent, or are you just saying it was there, it could be spent?
Well, you may want to tackle this.
No, at the end of 2017, approximately in November, management came to staff and said, we found $300,000. We need to spend it. Buy anything you want. And that's what happened. And our position with that is, we were in the middle of negotiations. The Austin Peters report was out. We knew what it showed, which showed us 20% behind the market average. That money very easily could have been set to the side. That was approximately early November.
Did you say that?
Pardon me?
Did you tell them that when they said spend it?
Yeah, we've said that many times throughout the process. Furthermore, in December of the same year of 2017, magically another $75,000 came around somehow. Spend it quick. We got to spend it before the end of the year.
Okay, so who told you that?
Management staff, water division management staff.
Okay, so somehow, city manager, I want to know why that was said, really where that money went, what I'm going to need to.
I can tell you that we went on a spending spree in the last 3 months of that year.
And what did you buy?
Tools, pumps, generators. I don't know that there was anything off limits.
Okay. The step, you said, well, if you make a mistake, you're a newbie, you're going to lose a step. Come on, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think if you're a newbie and make a mistake, they're going to take your step away. And you said it was double jeopardy if they discipline and take the step. Then I would suggest we don't discipline, we just take the step. Because I think that's ridiculous that you can expect to earn back a step when you lost it in the first place. I don't agree with that. I still haven't decided on the other, but I do not agree with that. And if it's going to get the city in trouble, knock out one of them. I just am concerned about your financial facts. We have the duty to listen to the facts, you're right, but we also have the duty to be fiscally responsible to the city and to you. You live in the city.
Absolutely.
You pay our tax. You know what we're up against.
Absolutely.
We have to make it fair to you and everyone else in the city. So that's what we're looking at. That's what I'm looking at.
Could I take just a second to explain that double jeopardy on the step issue there? So how our contract is structured and works is, if you get meets expectations on your evaluation, you get a step on your anniversary date. So if you are disciplined in that particular year, you don't get that step. So essentially, and our pay metrics is built on 5 pay grades, and there's 20 steps for each pay grade. So if you lose a step in any given year, so to speak, you essentially have not only lost that step for that year, which is the year that you were disciplined in, and believe me, I absolutely agree that there are consequences for one's actions, but where do you draw the line at? And unfortunately, with the way things are structured currently, you are not going to get that step back till the end of your 20-year career. So really, is that fair? In our eyes,
Why would you get it back at all?
Pardon me?
Why would you get it back at all? That's the consequence. You go to jail, that's your consequence. You don't go, why would you have the consequence, then get the consequence taken back and go, oh, nope, no consequence?
Well, I think at least our position is, we're looking for something fair and reasonable, and that fair and reasonable is that year you've gone without your step.
The year that you did something wrong, got disciplined?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you tell me who it was that told you? You said management. I want name.
In my particular area, we are overseen by There's four members of management, starting at the top and working down. There's Jason DeWitt. At that particular time, it would have been Dan Zeller. Going on down the list,
My question to you is, you've made a huge accusation here in a public forum that you were told to go spend money that we're going to lose by the end of the year, and you were told by management. I want to know who told you that, not the chain of command, who told you that?
all of those individuals did, and that's just in distribution. There's other management. Again, this contract covers four distinct areas. They are distribution, which I'm based out of, and then plant operations, plant maintenance, and then meter shop.
So I want to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly. You were told, we found $300,000, we need to go find a way to go spend this before the end of the year, and you were told by those individuals that you just said right there.
That is correct. There was essentially an end of the year, what we were told by those individuals was that I'm going to say it was early November of 2017, they did essentially like an end of the year financial wrap-up or audit, if you will, and at that particular time, they had $300,000 that they essentially found, if you will, and we were basically asked, what do we need to do with it? What can we
Are
do?
any of those individuals who told you that in this room here tonight?
I don't believe so, sir.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Councilman Jensen.
I have a few. So were you guys not part of selecting the Austin Peters group at all?
No.
The answer would be no. My understanding is that there was a bid placed, 3 entities responded. The city was the decider on who got the bid. Simple as that.
So what group were you involved in selecting then?
We didn't select
Any
any.
group.
So you didn't participate in selecting the fact finder either?
I'm sorry?
You didn't participate in selecting the fact finder either?
No, we did by
So
statute.
you did participate in selecting a group?
I think they're two different things, sir.
Yeah, they are, that's what I'm asking.
That
I'm trying to understand what your level of participation in this is.
the last contract obligated a wage study to be commissioned. That onus was to the city. They put out a bid, they selected that. Once we entered the meet and confer process and declared impasse, the statute indicates that we go to a fact finding.
Right.
There is an alternate selection process for that, to which both myself and counsel for the city was involved in to reach the selection of that fact finder.
Okay. Since you weren't part of selecting Austin Peters at all, you didn't have the opportunity to put any of the parameters on what they would study and how that information would come back. Is that correct?
We did not.
Okay, so the city has indicated that they studied the base wage, and you guys are saying that that was not done. Is that my understanding? You've never said base wage or base rate, and they talked extensively about that. So I'm trying to compare apples to apples here.
Okay.
What, in your opinion, was the wage that was studied?
I thank you very much for that question, because I was actually going to try to address that with the council, because there's been a lot of talk tonight about, is this an oranges to oranges, apples to apples comparability study? So, point blank, this was a wage to wage comparability study, and that was
Base wage
yes,
or
that's
total compensation
no,
package?
base wage, just straight hourly rate base wage comparability study, and as city staff and Ms. Seaton has told the council, there was, after where the study showed, which was 20% below the market average across the board.
For just base wage, again,
That-
correct?
that-
Not any of the other incentives or package?
That is absolutely correct, sir. When they expressed concern that, well, that doesn't take into account any of these other ad pays that they've talked about, we said, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're more than willing to look at all of those. Let's go back. Let's call the entities that were surveyed, which are in your packet, or better yet, let's call Rebecca Crowder with the Austin Peters Group. That was never, ever taken up on. And the minutes of that negotiation session should show that to the council.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to understand, is exactly where more information is needed to come from. Another couple questions, if I could. Why is it not fair to divide it by 2 instead of 3? You talked about, whatever the compensation package is, the city is asking to take the total amount, whether it's 11.5 or 17, and divide it by 2 over the next couple of years. You all are advocating it be divided by 3, going all the way back to 2018. I'm curious why you don't think that's fair. It's the same amount of money at the end of the day, am I right?
I would disagree with that
How so?
statement. Well, let me answer your first question. Every wage proposal that was presented by us and by the city was for 2018, starting January 1, 2019, and 2020.
Right.
Through the entire negotiation, until we get to the fact finder, and only then does the issue of retroactivity come up. Now, the ground rules of our negotiation indicated that all issues were to be on the table previously. Okay?
So is your concern with the ground rules being violated or not, the fact that you're going to get the same amount of money regardless, is that?
Well, I respectfully disagree, because I think it shows that we're not going to get anything for 2018. I don't disagree that whether it's 11.5 or 17%, I mean, that is what it is, obviously. But for 2018, there's nothing there.
That's true, but the idea is, say it's 15%, for example, instead of doing 5% each year, you do 7.5 this year and 7.5 next year. That all adds up to the same amount, right?
Well, it does, but we've lost the use of that money, or that money, generally speaking, in 2018.
I wouldn't disagree with that, but, so is that your only reason for the concern there?
I'm sorry, say again, sir?
So is that the only reason for your concern there?
Oh, absolutely not. Also, as was pointed out by the city side, 2018 was, I believe, our 3rd busiest year on record. Almost 900 breaks. Extremely busy year for us. We worked a lot of hours for the governing body. And obviously that retro pay would take that into account.
So to maybe answer the question further is that Ms. Seaton was actually, 100% on base that last year was, these guys were working 18, 24 hours around the clock. If it's not taken back to January 1 of 2018, they lose out on all those hours and the wage increases. They lose out on the overtime that was worked. All those incentives of 2018 essentially evaporate. In other words, these guys don't
This could be a
get paid.
substantial amount of money to both you guys and an extremely large cost to the ratepayers, essentially, is what we're getting at. Nobody seems to know the total cost for this on one side or the other. I'm not faulting you for not having that. It just seems to me like, and that I think you've explained your position quite well, but it sounds like we're talking a lot of unknown money here on both sides.
I guess my follow-up comment would be that if the hours were worked, including the overtime, and the service was provided to the city, we should go back to January 1 of 2018 and apply the proper wage so that those people can be adequately compensated for the work they perform for the city.
Well, and the city's argument to that, my understanding was the whole point behind that was that there would be a second shift, and that was not agreed to in 2018.
That is correct.
Okay, excellent, okay. One other question, so on the step issue, I do agree with your point in that seems like an unfair penalization for one's entire career, but rather than getting a freebie, why not move to performance-based and earn that right back?
It's been our experience in working with the city, because actually we have tried to sit down with city staff before, in previous contracts, and try to work out something competency-based, and quite frankly, it didn't work. And not because we weren't willing.
How long ago was that?
That would have been in approximately 2000 and, I think it was 7, 8, and 9. In fact,
Well over 10 years ago.
approximately, that's correct. And in fact, we ended up really taking it in the backside, if you will, because part of the agreement during that time was, while we were trying to work towards that competency-based plan, if in fact that never worked out we wouldn't get any step raises for that particular, for those, all 3 of those years, for the life of that contract.
But that's something you'd be willing to renegotiate with the current staff in the current, and not necessarily this contract, but 10 years ago was a long time. We've got different people, it's a different environment. So I appreciate that you guys worked on that a decade ago, but a lot of things have changed since then.
I would absolutely agree, and I would obviously say that we're always willing to look at stuff, absolutely.
That's good to hear. One last question. If you weren't happy with Austin Peters, why not do your own study?
We were happy with Austin.
Yeah, I think we were happy with Austin Peters. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. So just a little more background on this
Well, but
comparability.
you guys just said that you weren't happy with it, the fact that it only covered a base wage.
No,
instead of
sir.
all the compensation.
No, sir. We are fine with Austin Peters. Maybe I articulated it poorly, and I apologize if in fact I did. We were absolutely fine with the Austin Peters comparability study. As we all know, it showed us 20% behind the market average. What I was trying to explain, and obviously did a poorly job of it, was when the city determined or realized that that's what it showed, that 20% behind the market average, that's when they started saying, whoa, 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 this is not a valid or an accurate study because of these ad pays, if you will. And you know what? We said, let's take a step back and let's, one of 2 ways. Let's either contact Austin Peters again and ask him to look at those ad pays with the entities that we surveyed, or let's contact these entities ourselves and see what ad pays they have.
But that's why I'm asking, why didn't you all do that?
The city was not interested in doing that.
Well, I'm not asking what the city was. For your own information, why not do that?
Well, actually, and I don't have anything to give you in hand, but I look at all these entities almost daily. And these other entities have these other ad pays
Sure.
for the supermost part. Now, I openly say, do we have something that they don't? Absolutely. Do they have something that we don't? Absolutely. It's kind of a give and take.
Sure.
It really is, depending on the entity. But again, overall, we were more than willing to try to take a step back and either go through Austin Peters' group again to look at those ad pays, or do it ourselves, meaning both sides, contact those entities that were used and try to find out. We absolutely did that.
Thank you. And one last question, if I can. What are you all willing to do to be 11.5 or 70% more efficient?
Oh, you want me to tackle that?
Please.
First of all,
Well, I appreciate it. I'm interested in his answer, because he actually does the work. No offense.
Well, it's a recruitment and retention, so that right there.
Well, we don't want to add people. We want to make our existing folks more efficient.
I understand, and we have been in a perpetual hiring cycle for almost 4 years. This contract roughly covers 75 bargaining positions. Across all the areas that it covers, I don't know off the top of my head, but we are a multitude of positions down, and have been for some time. So how does that directly answer your question? The people that we have had to pick up the slack and be more efficient to cover that workload that those individuals that aren't here, those positions that aren't filled.
So in theory, with hiring more people, we should see drastic improvements in productivity, just because you'll have more people that aren't stretches then?
Well, it's not more FTEs, it's just hopefully
Agreed,
trying to
but
fill.
Yes, you essentially have more FTEs than you do now. Now, granted, I realize the number is still 75, but you have unfilled positions, am I right?
Correct, that's correct.
Okay, so we would have more people who would be able to do more work, essentially?
That, correct.
Excellent answer. Thank you.
Additional questions for the union team? Councilwoman Hiller, since she hasn't had an opportunity to talk, and then we'll go back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just trying to put all this together, because it did take, whatever it is,
A long
years.
time.
A long time. So why would you say, I mean, there's concern that the negotiations just didn't progress. I think in simple terms, people could look at it that you all were not interested in performance-based, and, you know, your answer is a little different than what we heard earlier, but also wanting to be able to recompensate somebody who either did something wrong or simply was not up to the job. so they weren't worth X amount of money that first year anyway. You're arguing for just pay for being there. Why would you say it took this long?
Well, I can absolutely assure the governing body that this side of the table did not drag their feet whatsoever. Just by nature, most negotiation cycles are, generally speaking, lengthy. I think it's just the nature of the beast, and we're not unique. I assure the governing body of that. They take a while. Proposals got to be vetted from each side, run up the flagpole, whether it's through city's legal or our membership, whatever the case may be. It's just a lengthy process. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, if an agreement can't be reached and you move into those other areas, such as, once the impasse is declared, you move into those other areas such as bringing in a federal mediator, which we did not once but twice, and
I
unfortunately
understand that, but more oriented toward the issues, if I may. I mean, the second shift has been hanging for years,
tackle
for
that.
instance.
Okay, sure.
So,
Councilwoman Hiller, I'll be very straightforward. We were in a situation where we received a wage study that showed that our members were underpaid 30% in the market. We all look at comparables when we seek employment or whether we determine who should be compensated one way or the other. I mean, Madam Mayor indicated in her prior statements that when there was a change in your all's compensation, that I believe there was comparable information reviewed. Whether you're in public or private, if the employees are 30% underpaid, that creates a significant issue. And what happened here is the union firmly believed that they should be compensated within the relative market. The city negotiating team took a different stance. Now, I want to be clear. I appreciate everything that Braxton and Kathy and Jackie and Kim did. I mean, we've got 30 tentative approvals on other issues that we've resolved. But in this specific instance, we had a wage issue, and second shift was involved with that as well, that those issues took time to sort through. And if you were in our shoes and there was a report saying that you were being 30% underpaid, I hope you could understand why we took the position that we did. But we're not here asking for 30%. We're asking that you follow the fact finder's recommendations, which is neutral in my opinion.
staff reported a little earlier that the goal was to get to the 90% level or so, and reported that with the 11.5% increase that we were 5 to 8% below par, which would mean 92 to 95%. Do you disagree with that assessment?
Yes.
Absolutely.
As Mr. Vobach indicated, we believe that there's ad pays that other municipalities have that are essentially a wash, they're a trade-off. But we have a wage study saying that the members are 30% underpaid, and if there's only 11.5% added to that, there is a huge discrepancy that remains. Now, I agree with the fact finder's recommendation that is it realistic for you all to make that up in a 3-year term? No, we're not asking for that. We are taking into consideration the fact that you all have to be good stewards of taxpayer funds and the funds that are generated through these fees. It's a situation where we are asking you to help get us started to a point where we can have a competitive wage, to have quality employees come in and be hired, because we are short right now, that we can retain quality individuals to become members of our community. That's what we want. Go ahead, B.
I think it's also important to explain so that the governing body is fully understanding our proposal, and even some degree the city's, is built on 3 components. So you have the steps, which are 1.5% between each step. and then there is a COLA, a cost of living adjustment, and then there is what is generally referred to as a catch-up wage, which is solely based on the comparability study. And as far as what I believe Jackie was talking to, I think she said 5 to 8%, we totally disagree with that. The wage comparability has said we are 20% behind the market average. So you have to look at what are we putting towards that wage, that catch-up, towards the comparability. If we put nothing towards the catch-up, that 20%, and it already has, and the fact finder talks about it, is now realistically, on average, probably 23 to 25%. We will continue day by day, month by month, year by year, continue to fall below even further of that market average. That absolutely is what will happen.
And Councilwoman Hiller, if you look at page 24 of the report, that is the city's proposal towards the top with second shift being implemented. To follow Pete's comments, through those 3 years, there's only 4% applied to the catch-up, and you're 20% under market. So that leaves a huge disparity that remains.
On page 24.
Might be a different document.
The fact finder.
Yeah, that's,
Page 24, that's what I've got.
that doesn't seem
The
to
first
indicate-
chart.
Starts with number 11.
You're talking about the fact finder report, not your
Yeah.
report, correct?
Fact finder's report. Right there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything about a second shift here. It talks about wage.
No, we're not, I'm sorry, we're not talking about second
Oh,
shift,
I'm sorry, I
Councilwoman.
thought I heard you say second shift. My apologies.
No. Okay.
The sentence reads.
Councilwoman Hiller, does that answer your question?
Trying to wrap my head around it.
No, I understand, it's a complex issue. That's why we're here.
This troubles me on the performance part, but 2005 to 2008 were a different time than now as well. So, just thank you.
Councilman Lesser?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was pretty blunt with Jackie in regards to the study and the results of it and the ambiguous nature of it, in my opinion. I'll ask you the same thing, though, because along these lines, because there's studies. You know, I know that there's not much of a study if I drive down the street here and fill my car up with gas and they tell me it's $50 to do that, it's $50. I know that's what it, but we're dealing with variables here, and so I do know that nothing's going to be completely accurate. That being the case, when we do get a number that as large as 30% underpaid, it does have to beg the question to me of, we're not talking 5%, we're not talking 7%. If that's truly accurate, I have a hard time believing that if the majority of our employees can go somewhere else and make 30% more, that we're not doing that and still retaining the numbers that we are. So does that come to at least to a conclusion that we can both agree that the number's somewhere in between those two? It's not 30%, it may not be the 11, but do you feel that that's maybe where the fact finder came with his recommendation?
Let me take that. Councilman Lesser, I would say that the Austin Peters Group are experts. That's what they do for their profession. Whatever they were commissioned to do, they compiled the data and put it together. I'm not going to challenge their findings because that's not my practice area, and what they provided is a valid study.
But it's a study is what it is.
No,
It's not, like I said, driving down the street and filling my car up with gas and this is what it costs. It's a projection of what they think it is based on their information. And then that's making the assumption that people in Topeka, Kansas in this train of work are going to accept 30% less than what they can get in Lawrence, in Manhattan, in other places. And that, to me, does not seem fundamentally accurate.
It is a reliable tool within the industry. I mean, you all know how often you commission studies to be done. You did it on the rate study, and you rely on that information. If you look at the comparables that...
Well, and that's what I think I'm trying to get at, is it's a study, and for us to say that it's completely accurate at 30% is making assumptions. No different than, you know, the bottom end saying 4%, 4 to 25%, whatever.
Well, I would state this. I have no information that would lead me to believe that it's an inaccurate study.
I could make the argument that I have 72 employees that still are accepting 30% less in wages, which means that it is accurate. I mean,
I would
the
let
same argument goes both ways.
I would let Mr. Vobach comment on our employee losses and our difficulty in hiring people, and the fact that, I mean, there are places out there that are paying more than a starting wage that we have for the union. I mean, Pete.
And that's accurate too, but I talk to in my line of work, all the plumbers, all the electricians, you know, I hear that Mars is having, everyone, I don't feel like this, the information that we have is not that, that's anything more specific to this industry than anybody else. It would be my point.
Well, I think our perpetual hiring cycle that we're in, you know, you said that you have all these employees that are willing to accept that. I don't know that that's accurate because of the turnover that we have.
I didn't say that. I said every company that I talk to is in a perpetual, you know, in regards to JADA, one of the biggest things we have to look at is what we can do to entice more employees here. We've lost people here in Topeka because we don't have enough employees to staff it. So that is the only statement I was trying to make, was I don't know that your perpetual cycle is anything that's isolated just to you guys, was all my point is. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councilman Jensen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Can anybody, either you folks or the city, answer as to whether or not the cost of living in these communities was part of this study? I mean, I know for a fact Lawrence is more expensive to live than Topeka is. I don't know much about Independence, but Columbia, Lawrence, Manhattan, Johnson County, I mean, these cost significantly more to live in than does Topeka.
So I'll address that. Mr. Vobach indicated that there is a COLA that's included, and that was at 1%.
Well, I'm talking about not the increase, the actual, I mean, if a gallon of milk is $2.50 here and $3 in Manhattan.
So the most reliable information is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There are quarterly reports published. I don't have a copy in front of me now, but in November of last year, my understanding is that it was close to 2% out of the Kansas City office. I would anticipate in another negotiation I was involved in, we actually vetted this, that for Topeka, realistically, we're somewhere in the 1.5 to 1.8 area. Now, for this negotiation, it's low because it's just set at 1. And you see that in the fact finder's report, but realistically, I believe for Topeka, if it's 2 in Kansas City, it's probably 1.5 here.
City Manager?
HR Director Jackie Russell can answer part of that question related to the cost of living factor within this study.
If you look at page 3 of the study, which was attached to the agenda item in the materials that Mr. Bergman provided, there's a table that includes the peer groups, and it includes the cost of living indicator and the adjustment made to normalize for differences in cost of living.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, Deputy Mayor, pardon me for forgetting you.
So now can we ask the city a question? Are we finished? What are we doing? Because I have a...
So do we have any additional questions right now of our union team? Okay, so stay close, just in case, because I think there's going to be further discussion, but absolutely. Deputy
Okay.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
So I
you.
do want either Jackie or Nick or somebody to address and shed some light on this page 23, number 7, that extra money that was in the budget for 17 and 18 and...
Thank you. During the fact-finding, the union brought up this issue of the $300,000 that magically appeared at the end of the year. I don't think that's a fair characterization. I think that I am actually offended at that. I have the greatest respect for the bargaining unit members. These are our employees. We work as a group together. It's a partnership, but I don't think that that was a fair characterization. The bottom line is my managers manage to their budget. I expect them at the end of the year to have enough money to pay for whatever needs to be paid for. And so I don't want them squandering their budget early in the year. These guys have to buy chemicals, they have to, and I'm sorry, I'm very emotional about this issue because it impugns my staff's integrity. They have to manage to their budget. I have breaks that happen year-round. I have chemicals that have to be purchased. After that allegation was made, I actually pulled and looked at the last 3 months of purchases. They were chemicals, they were supplies, they were pipe, repair sleeves. That was what we purchased. It wasn't just a matter of taking and squandering money. They were legitimate things. We managed to our budget. So thank you for the question and the opportunity to clarify that.
Additional questions from the body before we start hearing from the public comment individuals? City Manager.
I had one clarification. I haven't interjected here very much. There was the question about whether or not there was input received related to the Peters study, Austin Peters study. I was informed there was an email traffic from Mr. Volbach to Director Russell related to some of the scope related to that. We don't need to belabor it, but there was communication related to the RFP scope, and so I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Councilman Lester.
Braxton, if you could come up for a second, please. Braxton, I appreciate your comments, and probably more than anybody in our management, I respect you. And I do ask you that I was offended by the comment as well. And that's why I wanted specific individuals. And I trust that you will, if that's not the case, have conversations, because we don't want that, even that implication that that's going on, as I know you don't either. And I trust that you will take proper measures to make sure that's not happening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a request from the union to speak back. Is that after we? It's part of the public hearing. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not breaking any protocol by allowing them to speak. No? Okay.
While I absolutely appreciate what Braxton has just said, I stand before you, and I absolutely stand by what I just said previously, my previous testimony to you guys as far as those monies in 2017, period. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So at this point, we do have individuals signed up for public comment. The way that this process is going to go is that we do have individuals who have signed up. They are allowed 4 minutes to speak to the council, and then after that, I will open up the public hearing again. So for those individuals who want to have an opportunity to speak, who did not sign up to speak, that want to speak to the specific issue, you also have the opportunity to do so in a time frame not to exceed 4 minutes. So the first person signed up to speak is, and I'm sorry that I'm going to mess this name up, Brad Duschensnaw. Okay. Did I mess it up really bad?
You messed it up pretty bad.
Okay. Forgive me. If you would not mind, I have a council member with a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me just a second.
Yes.
This is a hearing, and I appreciate that, and I just want us to move on with the hearing, so I would hope that we don't start all these accusations. Are the parameters still the same as what we usually have to address the chair? I just want to be clear on that, because I see this is getting a little intense, and that's not what we're here for. We're here to do the right thing and what's best. And I just don't want to sit here. There's a way that we can say things and act to get our point across. And I just want to make sure that we're not getting out of line with that.
Yes, ma'am?
So is that protocol or?
I think it's a good reminder of governing body meeting rules.
Thank you.
Please help me understand how to say your name.
My name is Brad Duchesneau. I have been
You can call me Delilah, whatever you want to do.
I'm used to it. I've been a water employee since 2001. I've been on the union negotiating team since 2004. And I just would like to say that I hope you accept our proposal. I've been in negotiations for 15 years through many contracts. It seems like every year we've been asked to take concessions with hopes that that money gets put back into our pay. And I just would say it's time that the catch-up gets caught up. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Aaron Freeman. Bless you.
Mayor and council, Aaron Freeman, President Topeka Firefighters Local 83. I'm just here tonight to support the water union and would support you guys in asking, support the fact finder's recommendations. So that's what I'm here for. That's about it. If you guys have any questions, I'll answer them, but appreciate your support.
Thank you, Aaron, for your comments. The next person signed up to speak on this issue is Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.
Just hold your applause, please. Thank you. My comments are mine only. My comments are specific to the second shift issue, which I have talked about at several budgets for the last several years. So this is nothing new. This discussion's gone on and on. We need a second shift because of the expense of overtime. I just looked at an article going back a couple years ago, well, it's a few years ago. I sent it to you, 2013, where the union was paid almost $1 million in overtime. Now, that's less now, but it's unsustainable. And the citizens cannot continue to pay rate increases of 6% and 5%, which was done in 2018. And then the representative says that, well, you can just increase rates. No, you can't. There's about 40,000 ratepayers. They also are part of this organization, and citizens. And they too have a right to ask for fairness in their rates and quality service as well. Now, I'm not saying that the pipes aren't being fixed. I get that. But I doubt that the fact finder was aware that we have 4 times more cost in fixing our pipes than other comparable cities because we have 4 times the breaks. Another study that I looked at last fall, I did go over the water department because I had questions about this, so I wanted to find out. We are getting 57 breaks average per 100 miles that other cities are having 13 breaks per 100 miles. We have 870 miles of pipe. About 625 of that is distribution. Now, it's my theory that if we would just start replacing more pipelines, we would probably cut some of this cost, but we have to have that second shift to increase our productivity. So I don't know anything about the wage differentials, and I'm not going to comment on that. I will say that the cost of living in Topeka is much cheaper than many surrounding communities, and I think that has to be factored in. But I'm not saying don't raise wages. I'm simply saying we need a second shift to solve some of these long-term problems. And then we also, not according to this, or not anything about this discussion, but we do need to look at replacing more pipe quicker. Because we put a lot of worthless iron pipe in the ground over years. I've talked to many contractors. They've said that it was unbelievable what our engineers did to us. They put a lot of worthless iron pipe in the ground in very acidic soil, which this city has about 70 to 75% acidic soil, and it should have been PVC. PVC's been around for 50 years or more. Tony would know. I'm telling you that this system needs some change and some operational change, but we also need a second shift. And I will go back to this last rate increase. One of the ladies that changed her vote, it was Mrs. Swartz. I looked at this in 2018, I just looked it up. She said, well, I'm going to raise these rates to fix the infrastructure. So she was specifically doing it for infrastructure, not just more wage increases. I'm not saying that wage increases aren't important, but we have got to get to productivity issues in this community and address these long-term problems of these constant breaks that are occurring because we're way higher than other cities. And that's by studies. So that wasn't in the fact finder's report or the representative, he didn't mention that, but I'm mentioning it because it's fact. And it's something you're going to have to consider when you're looking at this agreement. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Matt Blassingame.
Madam Mayor, governing body, I'm Matt Blassingame. I'm a City of Topeka employee. Just for clarification, I do have the report here, and the fact finder does state that the breaks in Topeka are double the national average, so the fact finder did have that information. We've talked about this at length this evening, so just real quick, the men and women out here are doing, as Councilman Emerson said, a tough job. Not only are they doing a tough job, they're working their tails off for this community. In the extreme heat, extreme cold, 24 hours a day, they're doing a difficult job, working their tails off for this community. And I think that this is a study that was conducted by the city. This is the city's comparability study. We went to a neutral fact finder who looked at all the information, and they have made the recommendation that these members get a fair and equitable wage. So I would encourage you to support the fact finder's decision. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, we have the opportunity for any individual who is interested in speaking in this specific item to address the governing body. The comments are to be respectful, not accusational. You could express, your support or your lack of support, and you are limited to up to 4 minutes to speak to the body. So if anybody would like to speak, this is your time. I have to ask this 3 times, so bear with me. If anybody would like to speak to this issue specifically, you can approach the podium. And lastly, if anybody else would like to speak to this issue, you may please approach the podium. Seeing nobody, at this time, the opportunity to speak has passed. Body, we have in front of us a very important decision to make. We have heard from both sides, and we understand what would happen if we have one choice or the other. Before we go any further, I do want to thank, first of all, the staff for doing the work that they have done. Union negotiations are not an easy task. And this is, we're talking about people's livelihoods here. And when we talk about the morale, we're also talking about the morale that we have on both sides, right? Because we have professional staff working on one side and professional staff working on other expertise. And when it comes to adaptive issues, which is people issues, there is never an easy answer. I also want to thank the union representatives that are here and thank also the union members that have cared enough, not only from the ASME union, but also from the police and from the fire, to come here tonight and express your concerns, to be here to stand for what you believe in. This is what government is all about. This is why city government is real government, because you get a chance to do this. So thank you for being here. It's been a long night. So just bear with us as we talk and we deliberate on how we're going to move forward with this. I know that at this point in time, we have the opportunity, we've heard both sides, we've asked questions from both sides. It's a time for all of us to come forth with either a motion or with clarifications. So the first person to raise his hand was Councilmember Jensen. So Councilmember Jensen.
So there's an awful lot of information to absorb here tonight. I think it would be inappropriate for us to decide this tonight, just because this is the first time we're hearing testimony from both sides. Granted, we don't have a meeting in 2 weeks. I would move to defer until June 2nd to give everyone time to absorb. I have some additional questions that need to be answered about the study. I don't believe that that can be effectively accomplished in a week, and I don't want to put undue pressure on staff to get those answers, so our only option at that point is July 2nd. And with that, I will move to defer.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am not in favor of that. I think the one thing that I've reached to this evening is there's not any winners here this evening in regards to this process. I feel that unfortunately reaching this stalemate and the different pieces of information that have come to light and how it's been presented, I don't think makes either side look really good, to be quite honest with you. That being said, I think the last thing we need to do is have this holding over our head to defer again. I think we've had plenty of time to read the information, to review the information. And with that, I'm prepared to make a motion in regards to that. However,
We need to figure out if there's a motion, a second to the first motion. Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you. I will second it for sake of discussion. There has been a lot of information, and I don't really feel like we can make this decision without one of our fellow council members who have left. I think whether we prolong it a week or not, because there's been things that have pointed out to me that are the fact finders things that I like and some of the things that the city likes. So how do I sit here and put all that together in, let's see, our meeting's over at 10 o'clock, 30 more minutes, 35. I don't want to rush it. I want to do my due diligence, and we owe them. It's been a long time. We cannot help that we just got to this point and got all this information. And I think even the fact finder took some time out to review all the information. So that's where I'm at. I don't know where anybody else is at, so I will second that motion, because there's things in the fact finders that I report that I don't like, but there's some things in there that I do want to bring out too, that I do support. So I want to go through and make a list of both of those issues. And I just don't feel comfortable doing that in 20 minutes. So if everybody's ready to vote on it, go ahead. My vote will be no, because there's just too much stuff in there to just hurry up and do it. Thank you.
So I think Councilmember Lester, Deputy Mayor.
I guess my first question is, will everyone be here on the 2nd? that we know of now? Is anybody going to not be here? Okay. I mean, is anybody planning on not being here on the 2nd? Okay.
So Councilmember Lesser made a friendly amendment at this point in time, is what, if I think that you're considering?
I did not, no.
No, so you're withdrawing your motion?
I did not make a motion.
Oh, he didn't make it as a motion. Okay. Yes, Councilman Padilla.
Mayor, I have a question. Are we voting on these 1, 2, 3 items?
Individually.
Individually?
Individually.
Okay.
It's not what's on the agenda.
And that was my question.
No, the agenda is one single item, and I've moved to defer all of it.
Well, I'm in a position right now, I believe, I think I've paid close attention, as we all have. I think that we should move forward today, regardless of whether we're one short council member or not, and take these individually and vote on them tonight. So I would make a motion to do that.
So at this point, because we do have the motion on the floor to defer it, if you vote no, we would have that conversation again, and I think that that would be the cleanest way for us to approach this right now. Deputy Mayor?
I need clarification on, is it just yes, we vote yes or no on item 1, yes or no on item 2, or is it yes or no on item 1, but we would like this to happen? Or is it yes or no? I mean, I want to know what I would be voting on or what I can change.
So as a governing body, I think, and I'll have legal jump at me if I'm saying this wrong, we have the opportunity to decide what we want to do. We have been presented both sides, what staff would recommend, what the union is requesting, but at this point in time, it doesn't say anywhere that we have to accept either or. It's right, is that correct? That we could make amendments to that?
Mayor, yes, it's one motion right now, but one resolution right now, but you all could make a motion to vote on, 1 and 3 excluding 2, or however you want to amend it.
Then in that case, I would like more time to figure out what I would like to do.
Councilman Lesser?
Thank you. And along those same lines, we have the 3 items. We could bring up 4 more items if we wanted to. I mean, there's nothing that says that we cannot.
No.
Councilmember Lesser, these are the 3 issues that are open for discussion, just these 3.
But we can change those, that's what I'm saying. We can change those by
If it has
adding
to-
or subtracting anything within those 3.
Within those parameters.
Correct.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor?
Then I did misunderstand because I thought you said we could just add and change and, do that. But we are stuck with those 3.
Just those 3.
Okay, well, they're not going to do that.
Just those 3. Okay, so if there's no other discussion, at this point in time, we do have a vote on the table. And a vote yes would mean that this would be deferred to the 2nd of July. A vote no would mean that we want to discuss this tonight. Okay? I just want to make sure that we're all clear before we vote. Okay, we proceed by voting.
Motion fails. We have 4 yes, with Mayor De La Isla, council members Clear, Padilla, Mays, unless they're voting no.
Okay, so we're having some discussion tonight. We're going to bring it up issue by issue.
So we need a motion to split them then.
I'm sorry?
Don't we need a motion to split them then?
I don't think that there's a need for a motion to split, though.
If you wanted to, someone wanted to modify the way it currently is, they would need to make an amendment to the resolution. Or, as you mentioned, make a motion to take up each of the 3 items related to it individually, right?
Okay, Councilman Lesser? Oh, actually, Councilwoman Hiller was first, I'm sorry.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we went through that earlier, that they do divide into the first management recommendation, and then the first of the 3 pages that was resolution goes with that one. I think they split, and then the second chart, and then this chart as a vote. I think they're all set up for a 1, 2, 3 discussion and vote, correct? Okay.
I think the governing body, the resolution is worded in such a manner that you could look at each of the management's recommendations. Exhibit A is management first recommendation. Exhibit B is management's second recommendation. And Exhibit C is management's third recommendation. So you could start with a motion to approve Exhibit A and C, or a motion to amend Exhibit A.
Okay, so, yes, Councilman Jensen.
Do we also need, we're not following the general council precedent by seeing something one week and voting on it the next. Did we also need to modify that? Because this is the first time this has been presented to the council.
It was a notice agenda item.
Well, I don't know if we need to, normally we have a discussion and then action following week. That's our general precedent. I don't know if we need to suspend the rules for that this time or not.
There's no, there's no, I think the question is there a requirement in the governing body rules to discuss an item before you vote on it? And I don't think the
There's not.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser?
Sure.
I had that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I then would move to make a motion to, and please, Lisa, correct me if my terminology is wrong, to accept Exhibit A with the change of, I guess that's where I'm not completely clear. I want to make one change to the 3 items, so I'll refer to you if it's best to go one at a time, or if I can still do that within one single motion.
Yeah, the
Oh, I'm
first one,
sorry.
item A is second shift.
I'm sorry, in regards to the, I'm looking at the wrong one then. I have the 3.
So if you go to the agenda packet, it would be the equivalent of page 34 when we're looking at. Doesn't have the number, but it starts having the management recommendations.
There again, I have the staff recommendations of 1, 2, and 3 in my packet. That one didn't come in my packet.
Okay, yeah.
Councilwoman Heller?
I think the resolution makes reference, it's just one page and says we're adopting exhibits A, B, and C. And so if we take A then B, then C, one at a time. Then if we've adopted them all, the resolution's fine. If we've amended or changed that, we can, all it takes is the last line in this resolution, and I think we're done. Just divides it up by Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, and then the work management charts tie in with them. You can find the reference to Exhibit A, B, or C over in the right-hand column. If people don't have them, we need to.
If just by point of protocol, because everybody's looking to make sure that we have the same document, let's take a quick recess to make sure that everybody's on the same page and has the same documentation in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I had 1, 2, and 3 which are the same.
So we can copy them right there.